Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I need to talk about something urgent, illegal immigration. It's wreaking havoc in both the US and South Africa, yet our leaders pretend it's not a problem. And it's not just politics, this is about real people's lives. Recently, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett claimed on MSNBC that entering the US illegally isn't a crime. I had to ask myself, is she serious? And what about South Africa? It's heartbreaking to watch the same pattern unfold. Open borders, strained resources, and no accountability. People are suffering, but it's like no one's paying attention. Let's hear what she said.
They continue to say things like the illegals and that they broke the law coming in. But what they're not telling the American people is that it is a civil violation. It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime.
Did you hear that? This is blatant dishonesty. As a lawyer, she knows better. Illegal entry is a federal crime. Yes, most times it's treated as a civil violation, but it's still illegal. Why downplay it? Why lie? What kind of lawyer is this? What's the agenda? How many people have to suffer for this to be acknowledged as a real issue? Look at what happened during the pandemic in the US. Undocumented migrants got prepaid debit cards loaded with thousands of dollars, free housing, business loans, and government handouts. Meanwhile, Black Americans, or FBAs, as most refer to themselves, the very people who built that country, were struggling. It's hard to watch. How is that fair? Imagine being a parent. Would you prioritize feeding your neighbor's children while your own went hungry? And let's be real, many of these migrants aren't even the most oppressed. They are mostly white adjacent and come from places like Venezuela and other Latin American countries, and end up displacing Black communities. But here's the real insult. Some of them even look down on FBAs, calling them lazy. Some even have the nerve to express racist attitude towards them, even though they fled their lands. How do you fight that kind of injustice? It breaks my heart to see that happen, and I'm sure it does to you too. In the US, this led to a massive voter drop-off. Black Americans, Democrats' most loyal voters and kingmakers of US presidential elections, stayed home during the last election. Why? Because they felt abandoned and angry. They saw illegal immigrants getting everything while they got nothing. Can you imagine how it feels to be forgotten by the people you've supported for so long? This gave Trump a huge boost to win by a huge margin, and that's how he became president of the US. Meanwhile, Trump has severely reduced illegal crossings into the US. No wonder many Black Americans don't care that Trump is deporting illegal migrants right now. If I were in their position, I'd feel the same way too. The system failed them, and they've had enough. Under Biden, billions were handed out to illegal migrants. Yet reparations for barbaric slavery for Black freedmen in the form of cash payments? Off the table. It's like they're being told their pain doesn't matter. Based on the billions spent on housing in expensive hotels, feeding, clothing, and handing out cash to undocumented immigrants, it's clear that both Democrats and Republicans have the means to pay reparations, yet they refuse to do so. And disappointingly, many Black politicians also support this position. And in South Africa, same story. Our laws say illegal immigration is a crime, yet our borders are wide open. Hospitals are overwhelmed, classrooms are packed, and our own people are pushed aside while politicians look the other way. How much longer do we have to endure this? How much more can the people take? Is this incompetence or is it intentional? Governments in both countries favor undocumented migrants over their own people. Look at South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Victims of apartheid never saw a cent, but politicians got rich. Do you know what it feels like to be forgotten by the system that was supposed to protect you? It's the same feeling Black Americans have experienced for generations. Even Thabo Mbeki's one-time apartheid reparations Payout proposal for victims went nowhere. 22 years later. Instead, Mbeki's wife became a billionaire overnight. How is that justice? Now let's talk about land reform. According to some, flooding, displacing and replacing native South Africans with people who are not from South Africa originally and elevating them in society ends the fight by black South Africans for the return of their land permanently. Why? Because an immigrant, whether illegal or not, has zero claim to this land. Is this a coincidence? Or is this a strategy to weaken the foundation of native South Africans? A recent Sowetan report showed South Africa's Border Management Authority needs 11,000 more staff. That's how bad things are. The government's inaction is like watching a fire spread and refusing to grab a bucket of water. But here's the real danger. Foreign nationals with dual loyalties trying to reshape our country. Look at Phil Craig, a British-born South African who still holds British citizenship. He's pushing for Western Cape secession, which would cripple a critical part of South Africa geopolitically and economically. And the courts, DA, and parts of the ANC, they might just allow it if the price is right. And then there's Ramaphosa, the same man who stuffed millions into sofas and mattresses during Farmgate and got away with it. During the pandemic, he lied as usual, claiming no one would be forced to take the medication, but ultimately people were forced to choose between their jobs and compliance. And this is the guy we're supposed to trust with our future? Come on now, let's get serious. Another group pushing for separation is South African Afrikaners. On February 15th, they demonstrated at the US Embassy in Pretoria. Some carried posters demanding a two-state solution similar to Israel's. They even thanked Donald Trump for opening refugee status to white South Africans, citing concerns over the Expropriation Act. But their demands raise an important question. If one group gets special treatment, what's next? Will others follow? There's a good chance they would. Communities like Fordsburg, dominated by Ethiopian and Somali populations, and Bedfordview, heavily influenced by Italians and Greeks, already show how local identity fades when specific groups gain dominance. Could this lead to further annexations? Could Zimbabwe claim large parts of Limpopo? Or do Nigerians demand Hillbrow? These scenarios aren't far-fetched. They highlight the risks when governments ignore laws and unity, allowing outsiders to exploit divisions. Foreign powers, like the US, could be eyeing strategic regions in Africa, like Cape Town. Is it so hard to imagine leaders like Ramaphosa prioritizing personal gain over national integrity? History shows us this happens time and time again. This isn't paranoia. It's a wake-up call. By now, it should be obvious to every South African that Cyril is a shady character. This might sound extreme, but when laws aren't enforced, outsiders will inevitably take advantage. In case you didn't know, recently a Lesotho MP even sent a petition to the United Nations, demanding that Lesotho reclaim vast parts of South Africa, including the entire Free State, along with sections of the Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. And here's the kicker, he was funded by Israel. Could this be Israel's way of getting back at South Africa for taking them to the ICJ? This is dangerous. It risks destabilizing the entire region. And here's something to think about. Did God descend to earth and promise Israelis another promised land? Right here in the heart of South Africa? Who knows? The parallels between the US and South Africa are undeniable. Both governments seem to prioritize undocumented migrants over their citizens. And here's where it gets suspicious. Shady NGOs suddenly pop up to defend illegal immigration, and says questionable courts consistently side with undocumented migrants, despite the law. And here's the real fear. Given the state of our courts and parties like the DA and parts of the ANC, indeed the entire GNU, it's not far-fetched to think they might enable division, if it serves their interests, or if the price their hands are greased with is good enough for them. Can we really trust these people to protect our nation? Governments claim they are helping migrants out of kindness, but the reality? Local citizens are the ones suffering. So, here's the big question. Is this just incompetence, or is there something more deliberate at play? Are governments using illegal immigration to shift power away from and replace native populations? It's time we demand answers. What do you think? Is this just chaos, or is there a bigger agenda at play? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. And remember, we all have a voice, so let's use it.